welcome to the pre-show.
Hey, how are you guys doing? How's everybody doing? We are so glad to be with you here on this smoky Sunday morning.
Yeah,
little
that's right.
smoky.
We're happy to be inside.
Yeah, absolutely. we drew the long straws, right? The opposite of the short
good
straws.
straws. I call it
the good straws. So we got to stay inside.
We did. If you're online, give us a shout out, say hello, so we know that you're here, so we can say hello to you, a special hello. So I'm here with John.
Hi, I'm John.
Wendy.
That's me. This is Wendy. This is my friend Wendy.
So we're so glad to have you here this morning with us. John is going on a very special trip soon.
Oh, yes. As some of you may know, I get the pleasure of being a part of our Crossroads church community, but in late September, I'm going to be leaving, going to Eastern Europe to spend some time on the missions field there, which is really exciting. I've been talking with Wendy about it this morning.
Yes.
And it's been great. I'm super excited to just be able to meet with unreached people groups who, don't have the same access that we have to the good news of Christ and of the cross. And so it's really cool, really important to me. So yeah, I'm really excited about that trip.
Yeah, and for those of you who may not know, John runs our student ministry, who meets really on Thursday night out on the patio. And John is doing a fantastic job, so I just want to give him a huge shout out and a thank you. Yeah. And we were talking before the service about missions, because missions is a huge part of mine. And we were talking about places we've been, so we were just like, hey, I want to let people know what you're doing at the end of September.
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
That was cool. So John, it is also pumpkin season. I love all things pumpkin and I think Jess does too. Jess loves pumpkin, especially pumpkin spice lattes.
Pumpkin spice lattes, that's Jess' thing these days.
Yeah.
Well, I'm not a huge pumpkin guy. I can't really get on the whole pumpkin trend, but I'm happy, for the season. Happy, excited for. Is that a part of the calendar? Is that on your calendar, on your
yes.
Apple calendar?
The minute that pumpkin comes out, I go and buy all the things pumpkin, so it lasts for me.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Pumpkin Cheerios, pumpkin coffee, pumpkin granola bars, pumpkin oatmeal.
Pumpkin walnuts? Is that what we heard? Pumpkin walnuts? Wow. We got a full pumpkin
salsa, yes. Trader Joe's has some.
Pumpkin salsa?
Yes.
Oh, man.
Yep,
that's out
pumpkin,
there. That's weird.
Pumpkin sauce, like pasta sauce. Oh, yeah. All the things. So my good friend Maria is on here. Thank you, Maria, for getting the shout out. I miss you. I miss seeing you. Ray and Carol are on here. Good morning to you. So thank you for giving a shout out. Who do you have on there, John?
Let's see. I have the Lenhart family is on here. Judah Howell is on here hanging out. Cindy Gibson. Hey, Cindy.
That's my mom.
That's awesome. It's great to see everybody hanging out I'm on the Facebook campus and you are on
I'm on
campus.
the online campus.
Absolutely.
Yes. Not that one's better than the other, but I'm on the online campus, just so you know.
Yeah. Well, I'm on Facebook, so
We have some great music here for you today. The band has a very, very special song. We have a great series for you today. So yeah, make sure that you drop us a line to say hello. And we have a school season starting.
Ooh,
I'm sure everyone is really looking forward to that.
I think we do. Are you looking forward? I know you guys have been going through the summer, right? That's what I heard from Micah.
We have been going through the summer, finishing it up because we started a little bit late, but we're going to be starting again very soon.
Wow.
Yep. Yeah. So everyone here in Colorado is getting ready to start another school.
The 2020-2021 school year.
Very weird, abnormal school season.
Yeah,
different for everybody, I'm sure, across the nation. So yeah, very different here. Yeah.
It's wild. I've also been doing school all the way through the summer, so I don't know how it feels, to get that summer break. Not that it was normal summer break or anything like we normally experience.
Yeah, I don't think things have been normal for quite some time.
No, not at all. Not at all. But do you guys have any big, not that it's back to school, but new things you want to implement this school year with homeschooling? Any new classes, new fun?
Well, how about this? I am going to have a senior.
Oh.
That is something that's a little bit hard.
That's pretty cool. That's pretty cool.
Judah's going to be a senior. So how about that?
Absolutely.
That's a little bit hard to swallow.
He's excited about it, yeah?
Oh, well, yeah.
Yeah.
He's very excited to be a senior.
Yeah.
I'm not so much. It's a little hard for me.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's a little hard for me.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I remember back when I was a senior.
Well, hey, we have a wonderful live cast coming up right now, so we'll see you on the other side of this video.
Welcome to the weekend. I'm Katie Martinez, and this is my take on what's happening around our Crossroads network and our world. This week, I decided to quit using the term new normal. I used to find the idea of new normal comforting and helpful. New normal was supposed to go something like this. Something unsettling happens, and instead of resisting or resenting the change, we practice acceptance, we adjust our expectations, we learn new habits, new skills, we find our new normal. New normal then becomes a place of contentment and relative stability. Moving from new normal to new normal is one way we learn and grow and survive. But this summer there are simply too many strange things going on, and I've decided to label all of this new abnormal. It feels more honest to call it abnormal. And I'm simply unwilling to accept that all of this is here to stay. It's abnormal to see runners wearing face masks, abnormal for grandparents not to hug and hold their grandchildren. It's abnormal to try to create a vaccine in less than 1 year. It's abnormal to not be at the office, not to sing it in church, and not to wear lipstick. And I learned this week that our brains normally change in the summertime. When you take a vacation or read a novel or sit by the pool and listen to the white noise of kids splashing and laughing, or have drinks with friends on a shaded patio, your brain changes. It dreams, it rests, it floats, it's adventurous, it operates on a whole nother level. So another strange thing going on is that many of us never got our summer brain on, and that's not so bueno for our well-being. So if you're struggling to find your new normal, and wondering what is wrong with you because all the old tricks are not working, give yourself some extra grace. Instead of grasping at straws for the new normal, let's call it what it is. It's just weird. And then do something you enjoy. Read a novel, watch a good movie, ride a bike, meet a friend for drinks outside on some patio. And if your new abnormal is especially painful, please stay connected with us. Every Thursday at 6:30, we kick off a weekend with an online service of encouraging music and a life-changing message. This current series is called Soul Fest, and each weekend we're tapping into a popular song with power to touch our souls. Take in the service during a live broadcast time or outdoors in person on Sunday or on demand anytime. When you join in, go to the gathering page, fill out the digital Connect card. That's the place where you can leave a prayer request or ask for an appointment with a pastor or a care minister. Finally, I want to highlight what we're doing with your financial generosity this month. Every dollar we designate to the Kids Are Worth It Fund in August is going directly to Stay Free, an anti-child trafficking ministry in Romania and a friend of Crossroads Church. The best way to get started giving is to text the word Crossroads to the number 77977. Stay cool, be safe, and it's never too late to get your summer brain on.
Hey, good morning. It is so great to be together. My name is Ryan. I'm the lead pastor here at Crossroads, and I am at the Taft Avenue facility this morning, coming to you live at 10 a.m., and then I'll be outside here with the folks that are gathering safely on our lawn for our in-person gathering, and it is just good to be together. 10 o'clock, as I say this, is becoming one of my favorite times just because there's this sense of unity for those that our schedules can work out. I know that you might be traveling and you might be watching this at some other point in time, and I'm grateful that you're able to connect, but there is something just unique about knowing that we're in this together, that we're tuning in or we're gathering on the lawn or we're sitting in our car, lawn chair in the parking lot at this time. And so good to have everybody with us. I wanted to just take a minute this morning and thank everyone. First of all, I just want to thank those of you that are staying connected and have some space in your life to still continue to volunteer to make all this happen, between musicians and tech people and folks that are helping out with social media, getting the word out, to greeters and help set up and tear down of the outdoor service. We couldn't be doing these things if we weren't all committed and all in together to create this space of hope. And so thank you very much for doing that. I also want to say thank you to everybody who has been jumping on board. As Katie mentioned, in August, our Kids Are Worth It Fund, we have been directing towards this wonderful program in Romania. A friend of ours, has a great program there called Stay Free, which is focused on prevention of human trafficking with young people in Romania, middle school, high school students. And the goal of the Stay Free project is to educate 30,000 students, 30,000 kids on how human trafficking works, what are the signs, and how they can stay safe. And then also to train 500 community leaders, police officers, teachers, administrators in the school system on what to watch for and how to keep kids safe in the most vulnerable areas of those communities, and really probably the most vulnerable area of the world when it comes to human trafficking. And so we've been raising money to be able to support that and keep that going for its third year towards its goal. And so I just want to say thank you to everybody who's joined Wendy and I and our home in supporting the Kids Are Worth It this month. And we've been giving all that money, setting it aside for this program. So thank you very much. I would just encourage you to continue to give a little bit over the next week. We have a week left here in August, and you can give at crossroadscolorado.com/give, and just make sure you click on the little drop down button there that says Kids Are Worth It. I also want to thank everybody who's continuing to pray for our church that are connected. I want to thank you for tuning into the Drops of Hope, to reading the weekend Drop of Hope, and just keeping connected. It's such an awesome time. Thank you to those of you that continue to give and support the ministry and the work. I was just speaking with somebody today who they've been doing all kinds of work with Project Hope out in the community, working to meet tangible physical needs of folks that are just in a tough spot right now. And they were, working on jacking up a house and removing mold and doing a roof, and all kinds of great stuff. So thank you so much for staying connected. Thank you so much for recognizing that even when we can't gather the way we're used to, that we can still bring hope to our community in very tangible ways. The while you're out, all the things that we're doing. So thank you so very much for being a part of this community. And if you're new, if you're just now connecting to Crossroads, I want to say welcome. So glad to have you here checking things out. And hopefully you will find a sense of home and become a part of this movement, of this community as well. So hey, to help you understand the work and the project and what's going on in Romania, we've got a great little video with some footage from there to just give you a sense of the work that's being done with these students. So check it out.
Welcome to the live cast. My name is Wendy. Wherever you are, whenever you are, we are so glad that you decided to join us. I'm hanging out here on the online campus, and I wanted to say hi to Don and John, to Aisha, our wonderful host, to the Olson family in Fraser, to Jonna and Larry. John, who do you have?
Yeah, hi, my name is John. It's great to see you guys and be here with you. I'm on Facebook Live, and I have some of my friends. Carol Pretty is here. The Romero family is here. Who else do we have here? The Velasquez family is here. It's great to see all these familiar and wonderful virtual faces
That's
online.
right. It's great.
Yes.
Thank you for saying hello. Make sure that you drop us a line. We'll check in on you later. We're here at our Taft Avenue campus in Northern Colorado. And around here, we're heading back to school for what might be the most abnormal back to school year on record.
Yeah.
So make sure that you drop us a line and let us know how you're handling the back to school year.
Yeah,
All
yeah,
right?
absolutely. It'll certainly be different for all of our families around Northern Colorado
For
in our
sure.
community. But with back to school in mind, we wanted to give you a quick moment to catch your breath and enjoy 5 seconds of serenity. So here you go. Oh man, if only all of your back to school experiences were so serene and neat, but we know that might not be the case for everybody, right, Wendy?
That's
right?
true. That's true. Right now, you're tuned in to our live cast where we join you live on Thursdays at 6:30, Sundays at 10, or on demand starting Friday at noon. If you're here in Northern Colorado, check out the link for our live gathering times that includes a weekly gathering for students. Our hosts are going to drop it right there in the chat.
If you are in back to school mode, be sure to check out our weekly Kids Cast. It's so much fun. We go live every Sunday at 9 a.m. And there's also an on-demand version that's available Friday at noon that you can use anytime throughout the week or the weekend. I think the Kids Cast is so fun. It's one of my favorite things. I actually, love just watching it by myself, right? I think it's fun for grown-ups too.
Yes, so
you
families,
know.
make sure you
Yeah,
don't miss
absolutely,
that.
absolutely.
We want to make sure that you click the link for our digital connect card. You'll see that our chat hosts have already dropped it right there in the chat. Like Katie said earlier, the digital connect card really is the best way for us to stay in touch together and for you to let us know that you're part of our global network. So please take a minute to touch base with us that way.
As many of you know, we've been living into a lot of new ways of generosity and giving and just caring for people in this new and crazy season of our life and of the world's life. So one of the things we've been doing is called our While You're Out adventure, where we have a weekly item each week that you can pick up and come donate to either Crossroads Church at our North Taft location or any food banks or shelters where you are if you're scattered around the states and around the world. So our item for this week is individually wrapped fruit cups, just like this, individually wrapped fruit cups. And we would love, if you have some time this week and are out and are just thinking about it, to pick up some fruit cups and drop them off here for people who may need them.
Yeah, I know that's been really, really helpful for families to have that. John, do you ever hear a song and it really just takes you back to when you first heard that song?
Oh, absolutely, Wendy, of course, of course.
This next song that we're going to listen to is a song that I first heard on my first trip to Ethiopia back in 2011. And it's a song by Matt Maher. And I want to particularly point out some lyrics to this song. It says, "Love will hold us together, make us a shelter to weather the storm, and I'll be my brother's or sister's keeper, so the whole world will know that we're not alone. This is the first day of the rest of your life, because even in the dark, you can still see the light." Please take a listen.
It don't have a job. It don't pay your bills. Won't buy you a home in Beverly Hills. Won't fix
Well, like you've heard, we are in this series called Soul Fest, and we all know, at least for me personally, and I'm sure for many of you guys, that music is just such good food for our soul. And in this series, Ryan has been taking songs and song lyrics that we may be more familiar with and connecting them to Scripture in really cool and exciting ways. Yeah.
Yes. And the anchor verse for this series is found in Psalm 31:7, and it says, "I will be glad and rejoice in your unfailing love, for you have seen my troubles and you care about the anguish of my soul." And the first week, Ryan talked about the song Belovedness by Sarah Kroger. And we looked at the Song of Songs, and Ryan reminded us of the mighty power at work within us is the personal experience of belovedness. And the second week, we talked about the song, one of my favorite songs, Shallow by Lady Gaga and Bradley Cooper. And Ryan taught us that the only way to get rid of the monster that doesn't exist is to turn on the light. And in the third week, Ryan worked from the song Fix You, again by Coldplay. He taught us that the Holy Spirit is the intimate presence of God's unfailing love that reorders us amidst pain and loss.
In the fourth week of this series, we talked about a song called Brighter Than Apathy by a band called Remedy Drive. And we talked about how bringing unfailing love to the oppressed is the ultimate act of worship. And finally, last week, we talked about a song called Castle on the Hill by Ed Sheeran. And we talked about friendship and how our choices with lifelong friends is just such a great way to show unfailing love for one another, no questions asked.
That's right. And this week, we're going to check out another awesome song, and the band does an incredible job. You don't want to miss it. And again, this is one of our family's favorite musicals before Hamilton. And it's from the musical, The Greatest Showman. The song is From Now On. Check it out.
I saw the sun begin to dim and felt that winter wind blow cold. A man learns who's there for him when the glitter fades and the walls won't hold. 'Cause from then rubble, what remains can only be what's true. If all was lost, there's more I gained, 'cause it led me back to you. And from now on, these eyes will not be blinded by the lights. And from now on, what's waited till tomorrow starts tonight. And let this promise in me start like an anthem in my heart. From now on, from now on. Drink champagne with kings and queens. Politicians praise my name, but those are someone else's dreams. The pitfalls of the man I became. For years and years, I chased their cheers at the crazy speed of always needing more. But when I stop and see you here, I remember who all this was for. And from now on, these eyes will not be blinded by the lights. And from now on, what's waited till tomorrow starts tonight. It starts tonight. And let this promise in me
Hey, thanks for tuning in. My name is Ryan, and I'm the lead pastor here at Crossroads. And I'm so grateful that you took some time out of your schedule to listen in and be a part of one of these live broadcasts, or maybe you're watching it on demand. So thank you so much for being a part of it. You know, I love that song. I loved the movie, The Greatest Showman. It kind of took the world by storm. Nobody was expecting it to be such a big hit, but then it just really took off. This cast of characters coming together, the misfits, the outsiders, proving the world wrong. It was a great show. I mean, I remember just we'd have months where that would be what would be playing in our car and everybody singing. And I love this song that they just did, From Now On. It's kind of the climax of the movie, the very end. There's this epiphany, there's this moment of realization that, man, I've strayed. I've gone down this path that I didn't want to go to, and it's been a ruinous path almost. And I love those lyrics that say, from now on, these eyes will not be blinded by the lights. And from now on, what's waited till tomorrow starts tonight. It starts tonight, just like this declaration. And there's a moment there where there's this ownership that I've been blinded. Now, here's what's interesting. This story of P.T. Barnum and his rise and his creation of his circus, I don't think that P.T. Barnum was blinded by fame. I don't think he was blinded by money. I don't think he was blinded by prestige. I don't think those were the lights that he was blinded by. I think he was blinded by something kind of far more powerful and far more dangerous and far more controlling. I think he was blinded by something that actually controlled the way he viewed the world, the way he viewed himself, the way he viewed others, the way he thought about the universe. So I think P.T. Barnum was blinded by this fear of just being the tailor's son. That's what I think blinded him. That he just didn't want to be known as the tailor's son. There's that great scene after the initial performance and by the singer there, and everybody's wowed, and he's trying to make it into mainstream, and he kind of goes after his father-in-law, and his father-in-law says, you'll always be just the tailor's son. You see, I think that is what blinded P.T. Barnum. I think that wound, that experience that he had, that kind of triggered his mind, that said, this is who I am. This is what everybody thinks about me. And there's no honor in that. There's no value in that. And that began to push him down a path where he would make decisions to be anything but just the tailor's son. And it wasn't until he experienced great loss that his eyes were open to that reality. So I don't know that it was the lights of stardom and being popular and the money, but it was that fear. Because even with his popularity, even as he rose to fame, he still had that fear of just being the tailor's son, right? The truth is, we all have a blinding wound in our lives. We all experience it. We may not know it, we may not own it, but I promise you, we all have it. We all have this wound, this blindedness that distorts our ability to see ourselves, to see others, and to see God truthfully, wholly, really, as we are, as God is, as others are. And so we have things in pop culture to help us navigate our blindness, right? We call them things like mental health. Right? Mental health deals with my relationship with myself. Who am I? How do I see myself? How do I understand myself? Right? Helps us understand and deal with a wound that maybe provides a type of blinding nature to understanding who we are, rightfully so. There's a whole branch of really like psychological work and sociological work around emotional health. Right? How do I maintain my emotional health? And what is that? Well, that's my relationship with the world. My emotional health. It's asking the question, who am I in relationship to others? Who am I in relationship to this planet, to the universe, to the stars? Who am I in relationship to my neighbor, right? How do I understand the emotions that I'm experiencing that are often triggered by relationships? And then we have a whole branch of books and research and writing to deal with spiritual blindness, right? And we talk about this now in terms of spiritual health. And what is spiritual health? Well, spiritual health is understanding my relationship with God, right? It answers the big questions, right? Who am I in relationship to God, right? Who am I? Is this, am I something that God looks at and looks at with disdain and disgust? Am I something that God even cares about? Am I something that God wants to have a part of, Like, what is that? And so we have kind of spiritual blindness, spiritual health. And those wounds that we experience in our lives oftentimes produce a way of seeing the world that, we would call a blindness, because it's distorting reality. It's distorting truth that sits outside of ourselves. And what I think is probably the most important thing when it comes to this blindness is not discovering the source of the wound, right? It's not spending our whole lives trying to pretend that we're not blind. I think it's actually accepting our blindness, right? That we have to actually come to a place of accepting our blindness if we're going to find new ways to see. Right? And Scripture actually offers us a lot of wisdom on this, especially the life of Jesus. Jesus talked a lot about blindness. And he healed blind people, physically blind people, and he spoke about this oftentimes. In fact, in John chapter 9, verses 35 through 41, we have this really interesting encounter between Jesus and a group of religious leaders where Jesus talks about blindness. And it flows out of this experience that he had of healing a man who was born blind. So in John chapter 9, it says, when Jesus heard what had happened, he found the man. Now, the big question is, if you're picking up the story here, is what happened? What happened to this guy? Well, so the story goes, this man was born blind. Jesus came across him. He healed him. Now, he healed him by making mud, putting it in his eyes, and then the man became able to receive his sight. And he is excited, right? He's been born blind. He's never seen. He goes running, telling everybody. Well, the religious leaders can't believe it. People can't believe that this is the man who was born blind, because the prevailing thought of the day was that this man's blindness was a product of his sin or his parents' sin, right? Even the disciples, the ones who were following Jesus, they asked Jesus that question. They said, hey, who sinned, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? And Jesus says, no, neither. If you need to have a reason for it, Jesus is basically saying that the reason is so that God's glory could be made known through this man. And so the religious leaders, they call him in to the synagogue. They want to know what happened. He tells them what happened. They kind of freak out. They then call his parents in. His parents are scared because they don't want to get kicked out of the synagogue. They don't want to be left outside of their faith and their community. And they know that there's the good chance that they will be, because the religious leaders, they didn't like Jesus. They didn't know what Jesus was all about. Jesus didn't follow their rules. Jesus was seen as an immoral, liberal person in their minds. So the parents were like, hey, our son is old enough. You talk to him. They kind of threw him under the bus, right? And in John chapter 9, verse 24, it says that the religious leaders, the Pharisees, for a second time, they called in the man who had been blind. And they told him, you should give God the glory for this, because we know this man Jesus is a sinner, right? Because he had said, Jesus healed me, right? And I love the man's response. He says, I don't know. I don't know whether he is a sinner. I don't know. He says, but I know this. I was blind and now I can see. And these religious leaders were so caught up in Jesus's morality that they were missing the miracle, right? And they said, but what did he do? How did he heal you? It wasn't that he had healed, but how? How was important. What did he do? How did he heal you? And this man who was born blind, standing in a synagogue, maybe for the first time in his entire life, who knows, he might not have ever been allowed to go into the synagogue as a blind man, might not have ever had that help, might not have ever been seen as worthy of being in the presence of God, always seen as an outsider, always seen as a sinner. He says, look, and it's such great language about seeing. Look, I told you once, didn't you listen? Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples too? And then these religious leaders, these men of God, they cursed him. And they said, you're his disciple, but we are disciples of Moses. We know God spoke to Moses, but we don't even know where this man comes from. And at that, the blind man, who now can see, is shocked. And he says, that's so strange. He healed my eyes, and yet you don't know where he comes from? Like, for the blind man, it was very simple where he came from. And the blind man gives him this great lesson. He says, we know that God doesn't listen to sinners, but he is ready to hear those who worship him and do his will. It's interesting that this is the prevailing understanding of God, right? Based on the religious leaders. This would be exactly what the religious leaders believed in their own words, that God would never listen to a sinner. And we know this isn't true. We know that God listens to everyone. We know that God is present with all of us, sinners, saints alike. But this was the prevailing thought, that God would never listen or pay attention or give heed to a person who didn't follow the law, right? Or who didn't worship the way they thought that you should. So the blind man, who was blind, now can see, is saying, by your own understanding of God, you believe, you know that God's not going to listen to sinners, but only to those who worship him and do his will. And he says, ever since the world began, no one has ever been able to open the eyes of someone born blind, right? So he's like, what do you mean you don't know where he comes from? And then he says this, if this man were not from God, he couldn't have done it. Right? He says, look at the fruit. Right? By your own standards, you have to say that this man is of God because I'm healed. And you want to give the glory to God, so he must be from God. And at this, the religious leaders like lose their head. They just lose their mind. They don't know what to do with this guy. And they say, you were born a total sinner. Could you imagine? That's what they said to this man. I mean, the best day of his life, standing in a synagogue for the first time, going to be welcomed into community, no longer with the stigma of blindness, no longer people looking at him, wondering what sin he committed or what his sin his parents committed. They said, you were born a total sinner. Are you trying to teach us? Look at the arrogance. Like, are you trying to, like, we could never learn from anyone like you. And it says they threw him out of the synagogue. It's a big phrase right there. They threw him out of the synagogue. You know, it's very likely that this man had never been in a synagogue before as a blind person. He was certainly never allowed in the temple, in parts and areas of the temple, because he would have been considered unclean. He would have been left outside. See, here's the thing. The religious leaders, they excluded the man from the synagogue. Now, not because he was blind, but because he could see. And he could see in ways that they couldn't. And so it goes on and it says, when Jesus heard what had happened, he found the man, right? So now he knows what happened. The man has been excluded from the synagogue. He's been kicked out, not because he's blind, but because he can see now. And so now he wants to go and he wants to minister to this man another miracle, right? He wants to bring hope to him in the midst of his exclusion. So Jesus asks him, do you believe in the Son of Man? Now this phrase, Son of Man, is kind of tricky. We could translate it as the human one. It's probably a reference back to this figure in the prophetic book of Daniel. That's just this idea of God in flesh, right? The chosen one of God. And he says, do you believe in the Son of Man? Do you believe in this idea, this concept of the Son of Man, the enfleshment of God almost? And the man answered, who is he? I want to believe in him. And I love what Jesus says. You have seen him. You got to remember, this guy hadn't seen anything. The first thing he sees is the Son of Man, right? Hasn't seen anything. And Jesus says to him, you have seen him. Not the religious leaders, not the ones that want to exclude you, not the ones that want you to live a certain way and say certain things and follow the law of Moses. No. You have seen him, and he's speaking to you right now. He's speaking to you. And I love the response of the man. The man says, yes, Lord, I believe. And he worshiped Jesus. So the writer of John, right, the author here, he takes this story and he shapes it and he crafts it in such a way to shift the focal point from physical sight to spiritual sight. Right? So there's two miracles that are happening here, right? This man is receiving physical sight. He's being redeemed. He's being rescued from a lie that he's a sinner, that he's not worthy of God's grace or God's love or God's presence. He's not worthy to be a part of the synagogue. And so he's being healed of that, but he's also being healed of a spiritual blindness, right? And then Jesus explains it to him. Jesus says, I entered the world to render judgment. Now, this is a very, very interesting statement. I entered this world to render judgment. Well, now, his judgment is not to condemn the world, right? But to bring a judgment upon the world, to bring a judgment to people as to the truth, right? This is the truth. This is the state of things. This is the reality. And this is what his judgment is. I entered this world to render judgment, to give sight to the blind, and to show those who think they see that they are blind. I find this really fascinating. What Jesus is saying here is, I've come to bring this judgment into the world, that you're all blind, that you're all blind. And I can give recovery of sight to the blind. And for those who think they're not blind, I'm here to show them that they are blind, because that's where it all begins. It all begins by understanding that you're blind. There's no way around it. There's a blindness to this world. There's a way in which we exist. There's a wound that happens. There's a lie that we hold on to. And when we look at the life of Jesus, I believe deeply that we have so many miracles recorded, because these miracles were meant to heal both spiritual and physical blindness. right? Because the prevailing thought of the day was if you were sick, right? If you were born blind, or if you had some disease, or if you were lame, that you were a sinner, right? And that only God could heal you, only God could forgive you, that you weren't forgiven of your sins. And so Jesus comes, and his miracles are the proof, right? They're meant to show people, right, that he was from God. And he didn't follow their rules. I mean, Jesus was considered by the religious leaders immoral. And what's fascinating is his miracles were meant to show them that their ideas of morality, their ideas of how God worked were off. They were wrong. They were askew. They had gone astray, that their blindness had kind of led them down a path. And see, what was so fascinating here are a few things. Like Jesus's miracles, not his morality, validated his identity as the Son of God, right? Just think about that. It was his miracles, not his morality. Because again, according to the religious leaders, Jesus was a sinner. He was immoral. He didn't follow their Sabbath rules. He wasn't bound by their law. He wasn't bound by their religion. He wasn't bound by their understanding of Scripture. And so what Jesus was saying was, listen, I walk to and I live in and I am guided by my Father. And when my Father guides me, I follow. And the miracles were the proof that Jesus was this person, was this man being used by God. And we have come to understand and believe that Jesus in some ways was God, the enfleshment of God, right? And so you think about what the blind man had said earlier in John, right? He said, ever since the world began, no one has been able to open the eyes of someone born blind. If this man were not from God, he couldn't have done it. So this man is turning upside down your understanding of God, your understanding of how God functions and how God works and who God listens to, right? And so Jesus' miracles, like this blindness, that's what he's there for. And he's not there to condemn us for being blind. That's not the judgment he's rendering. The judgment he's rendering is, you are blind. You're blind. And this is what he says then to those Pharisees. It says that there are some Pharisees who were standing by, and they heard him. And they said, are you saying we're blind? Listen to this. This is so powerful. They said, so are you saying we're blind? And Jesus says, if you were blind, you wouldn't be guilty. What in the world? If you were blind, you wouldn't be guilty. But you remain guilty because you claim you can see. There's nothing here about moral guilt. But there's this understanding that if you choose to live in this lie, that you can see, that you have understanding, that you have clarity, if you're so certain of who you are and who God is, and that lack of it, then you're guilty. You're guilty of what? Of blindness. That's the judgment that Jesus renders. But you don't have to be guilty of blindness if you'll just accept that you're blind, because I can give you sight. It's such a fascinating way in which Jesus is expressing this truth of kind of a personal enlightenment, a personal salvation that begins with an acceptance of blindness. And really, what was it that was blinding the Pharisees? Well, it was their pride. It was their certainty, right? It was, we can never listen, right? I mean, what did they say to the blind man? You were born a total sinner. Are you trying to teach us? Right? They were so arrogant and so prideful in their morality and their following of the laws and interpretation of the laws in their own ways that they couldn't even learn a lesson from an incredible miracle. They couldn't learn a lesson from someone that they thought was such a sinner. Right? Their questions couldn't validate their way of seeing the world. They couldn't validate and keep them continuing in their blindness. And so what do? They exclude him. They throw him out. Their eyes had become tainted. Their vision of the world, their vision of God had become blurred. It reminds me of another one of Jesus' teachings on sight and eyesight and how important it was in Matthew chapter 6 in the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus said, your eye is like a lamp that provides light to your body. When your eye is healthy, your whole body is filled with light. But when your eye is unhealthy, your whole body is filled with darkness. And if the light you think you have is actually darkness, how deep that darkness is. Now, let's go back to our song, right? Let's think about what Jesus says here and go back to our movie and our illustration of P.T. Barnum, right? Jesus said, if the light you think you have is actually darkness, how deep that darkness is, right? So P.T. Barnum is blinded by this fear of being just the tailor's son. And so now he starts making decisions, and he thinks that as he gets the popularity, gets the fame, if he can validate who he is, that he's not just a tailor's son, then he'll find purpose and meaning and the world will be right. And so that blinding nature, right? This is such a great illustration of when you think you have the light. Now, when Barnum thinks he's moving in the right path, how deep that darkness is, because it nearly costs him everything. And so he has his personal salvation moment in the deep darkness of pain and loss. And we get the great lyric, and from now on, these eyes will not be blinded by the lights. There is a light that blinds, right? And so our food for the soul this week, right? The point I want to drive home for us, it's kind of wordy here, but hang in there, right? Is that our personal salvation, or maybe healing is a word you like, or enlightenment, right? But it's very personal to us, to our existence, that personal salvation, personal healing, personal enlightenment is the miracle of being able to see our blindness and the humility to accept the guidance of God, right? That's really what personal salvation, personal healing, personal enlightenment is it's this ability to be humble enough to own our blindness and to accept that we need a guide. Because like I said, we're all blind. And that's what Jesus is saying. Don't pretend you're not blind. We're all blind. We're all incapable of seeing on our own the grace and truth of God, the beauty of who we are, the beauty of unconditional love. It's just very difficult for us to see that. We are blinded by our experiences. We're blinded by the lies of this world that give what gives us value, what doesn't give us value, right? And so we develop this vision of God, oftentimes like the Pharisees, that God is one who's deciding who's in and who's out. God is one who punishes and rewards. And so we start to do the same. We decide who's in, who's out, who gets rewarded, who doesn't get rewarded. That's a blindedness. That's a skewed way of seeing God and ourselves and the world. And so we need a guide. We need a guide. We need to see in ways that are beyond our own faculties. That's the beauty of just owning our blindness, is to say, now I can accept a guide. I don't want to be guided around by another blind person. I want to be guided by the Spirit. I want to be guided by God who sees perfectly me, who sees this world perfectly. I want to be guided by the way of Jesus, right? So what about tomorrow? What about your everyday normal life? You know, when this broadcast ends and you got to go back to how am I going to navigate and manage school with my kids and work and everything else that's going on in this crazy time that we're in, right? Well, I want to encourage you, when it comes to the blindness that we all have, to own it. And one of the great ways of owning our blindness and keeping our eyes healthy spiritually is to embrace the power of this beautiful phrase, I don't know. I don't know. Just embrace that. Just embrace it. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know. We have to understand that there will always be this sense of haziness when it comes to our full understanding of God and ourselves and this world. And so own that I don't know. Right? For Jesus, faith wasn't this verbal profession of doctrines or religious laws. It wasn't going to synagogue or other kind of religious pursuits. For Jesus, faith was trusting that God was present, that God was guiding, that God was speaking, that God was providing, that God was revealing love and grace and truth. Like, that's what faith was. I mean, this guy who Jesus heals, I love it. He's like, I don't know if he's a sinner or not. I don't have any idea. But I was blind and now I see. I don't know. There is an experience that is a valid way of knowing these deeper truths that you just can't explain or understand, and we have to be okay with it. And then I want to encourage you with one of my absolute favorite phrases is, I want to encourage you to start thinking Jesusly. Think Jesusly. I grew up in this kind of pattern where I was told, well, you want to think biblically. The truth is, as I grew, as I really got to know the scripture, as I got to know more and more about the Bible, that can lead to a lot of problems. If I just decide I'm going to think biblically, I could end up with 25 wives. I could end up with all sorts of problems. I could end up justifying all types of violence and evil. I could end up believing all types of strange things about God. But I found that if I try to train and fix my thoughts to think Jesusly, to think about how Jesus saw the world, to think about how Jesus saw people, to think about how Jesus was experiencing this world, then I really couldn't go wrong. And this is really what, we would call the mind of Christ. Scripture calls us to have the mind of Christ, which was humble and gentle, compassionate towards those that power rejected. And Jesus was weary of religious structures that were controlling and that excluded. Jesus had a generous soul, a generous spirit, a tender spirit. And so to think Jesusly, we need to read about Jesus. right? Read different things. Read Jesus in Scripture. Read Jesus and learn and understand how the authors of the Gospels, right? How they shaped the life of Jesus, their experiences with Jesus for their own purposes. Each one of the Gospels was written for a different community, for a different purpose. And so some of the stories of Jesus are really reshaped and retold, right? To bring out a point, a principle about the life of Jesus. And so we can learn about those things, and then we can start to have this mind of Christ. And all of this brings us to this great question of, well, you know what? How does this bring peace and wholeness into our world? Right? How does me accepting my blindness give me peace? How does me accepting my need of a guide? Well, when you accept your blindness, right? When we just say, hey, I am spiritually blind. I'm never going to be able to navigate and understand this great mystery of God fully. I'm always going to fall into that trap of certainty and exclusion. But if I can just accept my spiritual blindness, then I can welcome the Spirit's leading. I can welcome the guide. I can welcome that it's not going to be through my might, it's not going to be through my strength, but it's going to be through the Spirit of God guiding me, teaching me, showing me. And I can be humble enough to desire that guide in my life, navigating the decisions, navigating the way I see people, navigating the way I understand morality and its a relationship to my life and my world. Psalm 143 verse 10 is just such a great passage around this idea of submitting to the kindness of God and allowing God to guide us, right? Psalm 143 verse 10 says, "Teach me to do your will, for you are my God." Right? Teach me to do your will, for you are my God. And I love this. May your kind Spirit guide me on ground that is level. May your kind Spirit guide me on ground that is level. You know, this past week, a few of us went and we climbed Long's Peak here in northern Colorado. We thought it was a good idea. And then we get into it, I wasn't sure how good of an idea it was. But I can tell you right now that the last mile of that, all these different terrains, there wasn't much level ground. There was a lot of uncertainty at times and fear and doubt and strenuous activity. But every now and then you get a patch of level ground, and it just felt so good. It felt so good. And so I can understand that great metaphor that I want the Spirit to, in the midst of lots of unlevel ground in this life, lots of terrain that's difficult to navigate, I want the Spirit of God to guide me onto that ground that is level, this path that's safe, the still waters, right? That's what I want to have happen in me. But for that to happen, I've got to own my blindness. I don't care if I've got degrees in theology. I've been in this thing called full-time professional ministry for over 20 years, that I'm in the Bible and I'm thinking about God and God's ways every day almost. Doesn't matter. I'm still blind. But I'm okay blind as long as I accept it, as long as I stick my hand out and ask for the Spirit to guide me. And then I don't have to rely on my understanding. I don't have to rely on my view of things. I don't have to rely on my interpretation of this Bible verse or that Bible verse. I can rely on the guidance and the wisdom of love of God. So as we wrap up, what is God inviting you into today? There'll be some next steps that our anchors will go over with, but right now we have a song for you. And this song has a great lyric about just understanding the call of God into our lives. And so I would just encourage you to think about these lyrics, right? And the lyric says, "You have called me higher, you have called me deeper." And it says, "I'll go where you will lead me, where you will lead me," right? And that's the question is, am I willing to be guided? Am I willing to be led? Am I willing to accept my blindness and know that this new way of seeing comes as I see through the eyes of Christ? So enjoy this song, take a few moments, breathe a little bit, and trust that God is truly speaking to you.
I could just sit and wait for all your goodness, hope to feel your presence. And I could just stay right where I am and hope to feel you, hope to feel something again. And I could hold on change me from the inside. And I could be safe, oh, I could be safe here in your arms and never leave home. Never let these walls down. But you have called me higher, you have called me deeper, and I'll go where you will lead me, Lord. You have called me higher, you have called me deeper, and I'll go where you will lead me, Lord. Will you lead me? Will you lead me, Lord? And I could hold on to who I am and never let you change me from the inside. And I could be safe, oh, I could be safe here in your arms and never leave home. Never let these walls down. But you have called me higher, you have called me deeper, and I'll go where you will lead me, Lord. You have called me higher, you have called me deeper, and I'll go where you will lead me, Lord. Will you lead me? Will you lead me, Lord? And I will be yours, I will be yours for all my life. And I will be yours, I will be yours for all my life. And I will be yours, oh, I will be yours for all my life. So let your mercy, oh, and I will be yours, Lord, I will be yours for all my life. So let your mercy light the path before me. 'Cause you have called me higher, you have called me deeper, and I'll go where you will lead me, Lord. You have called me higher, you have called me deeper, and I'll go where you will lead me, Lord. 'Cause you have called me higher, and you have called me deeper, and I'll go where you will lead me, Lord. 'Cause you have called me higher, you have called me deeper, and I'll go where you will lead me, Lord. Will you lead me? Will you lead me, Lord? Will you lead me? Will you lead me, Lord?
What a great message to sit and reflect on this morning, and to just sit in the presence and the Spirit of God. We have three next steps from this message to maybe challenge you to explore what God is inviting you into. First, we want to say, if the Lord is calling you, maybe it's time to confess your blindness and to accept the guidance of God in your life and in your walk. We also want to challenge you to maybe take time and read Psalm 143:10 3 times a day this week, and challenge yourself to count on God alone to lead you to level ground and to be your guide. And thirdly, maybe it's time for you to take some pressure off yourself and to stop believing that you could ever understand God perfectly, that we could ever understand God perfectly, that anybody could ever understand God perfectly. The prophet Isaiah actually talks about how God's ways and his thoughts are just so much higher than our thoughts and our ways, and we don't even have a shot at understanding them, but that's okay.
Yeah.
You know, and that's something that we have to be okay with. And so those are our next steps that we want to invite and challenge you into today.
That's really great. And if you would like prayer right now, there are a couple ways that you can do that. You can text the word prayer to 970-318-4831, and one of our care ministers will be in touch with you. And if you're on the online campus, which is where I'm at, you can go to crossroadscolorado.com/live, and you can just click the live prayer button, and one of our hosts will pray with you.
Before we head out, we want to talk about, again, how you can specifically give to our Kids Are Worth It August Focus with the Stay Free program in Romania. So remember, like we've talked about, all our August giving for Kids Are Worth It is going directly to Stay Free in Romania. The chat host will drop a link right now on Facebook and on the online campus directly to our Kids Are Worth It giving. And also, if you haven't checked out our Crossroads store, all the proceeds from the store this month will be going to the Stay Free Project as well. So
That's right. And next week, we are wrapping up the Soulfest series with the song Let Her Go by Passenger. Remember, you can catch all of our previous songs, which have all been amazing, on demand. You can catch them on our Crossroads YouTube channel.
have a great week, and we'll see you soon. Bye.